Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to sew this paddle wheel block, bonus block number 4, the final block in our jelly roll block of the month for 2021. I hope you're going to enjoy it. You can find everything you need to participate in this block of the month challenge by looking in the description right under this video. And here we go with our final block. This one is called a paddle wheel. And as always, the PDF will be included in the document, the link for the PDF, when I share it in our Facebook group. I'll just set that aside. I want to keep it handy so that I do my layout properly. If you're not going to print the PDF to follow, you can always follow along with this video. So to start off, you're going to need a light colored square for the center of your block. You can use a 4.5 by 4.5, or if you don't have that, you can use 2.5 by 4.5 and sew them together to make your 4.5-inch square. You want that center block to be contrasting. You don't want it to match any of the others. Go as light as possible on the center block. You want it to stand out so your pattern stands out as it surrounds that center block. I'm going to use these two pieces. You're going to choose 4 strips. You want them to be different, as contrasting as possible. On the PDF, I used a light, 2 mediums, and a dark. But when I went back to my jelly roll, I didn't have the long leftover strips that I wanted. They were all used. So I went with what I could put together. I find that these two are too similar, so I think I'm going to change the order a little so that I don't end up with green right beside green. So you'll take a look at what you have. You'll cut your 4 strips from each color, 2.5 by 4.5 from each color, and then you'll set them up in the order that you think works for you. But then you want to stick to that order all the way around the center. So let's get ready to lay out our block. We'll put these here. And then the green, and then my lighter version, and my center. This will be my center. Okay, so you want to pick always in the same order. I'm going to pick a light, a medium, a dark, and a medium, because I have changed the order. On the PDF it says light, medium, medium, dark. But I'm changing the order so that I don't have 2 similar colors touching each other. So your first 4 are going to go vertical. Then you're going to pick a light again, always starting from the same and picking in the same order. A medium, a dark, and a medium. These 4 are horizontal. Next we pick a light, medium, dark, and medium, going vertical. And our final is light, medium, dark, and medium, going horizontal again. And I know it looks a bit odd laid out like this, but it will work. So the first thing we're going to do, once you have your layout and you like the order of your colors, we're going to separate this into 3 rows. So I'm going to move up these 2 horizontal and the 4 vertical. That's going to be my top row. This will be my center row. and this will be my bottom row. So now I have it in 3 rows, and that's the easiest way to put this together. You don't want to do all the vertical and then all the horizontal and then have to sew corners. It's much easier to do it this way. So I'm going to attach these two together, sew them with a 1/4 inch seam. Then I'm going to sew these 4 together with 1/4 inch seams on each, press everything, and then I'm going to attach the whole thing together into 1 row, 1/4 inch seam, well pressed. You'll do the same on your next rows. 1/4 inch seam on these 2 sides, then attach to the center. You will have nesting to do on these 4 corners when you put the 3 rows together, so you want to be accurate about the size of your seams. So I'll get my first row done, and I'll be back to show you how it looks. And here is the first part of my top row. You can see that I've kept these running vertically, and these are running horizontally. So all I need to do now is put these together, and my top row is done. I've also made sure to press my seams nice and flat. The flatter the block, the nicer the finish. So you always want to take a moment to do that pressing. So I'm going to sew this on with a 1/4 inch seam, press it flat, and I'll be back to do my center row. And here is my top row done. I wanted to mention to you that when I picked it up in the wrong order. I sewed the seam and realized what I had done, and I had to rip it out and put it back in the right order. So don't do that. You want to make sure you keep everything in the order that it's laid out, or your pattern won't look right as it goes around. So we have our 2 vertical and our 4 horizontal in our top row. You don't want to mix up the order. You're going to sew 1/4 inch on both of these and press them nice and flat, and then come back and get your center square to attach them. Okay, so here's our 4.5 inch squares done. And once again, pay close attention to putting them back in the right order. You have light, medium, dark, medium, light, medium, dark, medium, light, medium, dark, medium. Just follow the original order. I know it's a little time consuming and it's easy to mix them up, so just pay attention to the order that you put them in. And you can always use a seam ripper if you have to. It's better than having one square in the wrong place. That distorts the finish on your entire block. So I'm going to sew these together, then add on this piece, press them flat, and our center row will be done. And here's our center row. And if you've kept your seams consistent, you should be able to nest easily when we finally put our rows together. You just want to make sure you keep your seams consistent. You can see the pattern that we're making now. It's very cute. I think it's really terrific. So on this last row, we're going to repeat what we did on the top row, but in the opposite direction. So you're going to sew these 4 horizontally, and these 2 are for the vertical row. So the exact same thing we did on the top, but in the opposite order. There we go. I'll put this like this. This is my horizontal that continues on here, and these are my vertical rows. I'll get this row done and I'll be back. And here's our 3rd and final row. And you can see how the pattern surrounds the center. I think it's a really fun block. And I love that we see the opposite patterns on corners. So that's why you want to make sure that you don't mix up your colors as you go. Check, double check, use your seam ripper if you need to, but you want your block to be orderly when it's done. So the next thing we're going to do is attach our rows together. In this case, I used 2 2.5s. So I have a center seam and the side seams to line up with my other rows. I'll just get my pins. I like to use pins when I'm nesting so that I don't move anything when I'm on my way to my sewing machine. I'm going to flip this seam over and butt these right up against each other. We've done a lot of nesting in this group, so I'm sure you're really good at it now. Just put a pin in so it doesn't move. Just check that your seams are butted up against each other, nice and flat. And your seams are going pressed in opposite directions. You can just finger press them over, put a pin in them so they don't move, and when you're finished sewing this long seam, you can go back and press anything you need to. There we go. I've got all 3 center seams lined up. I'm going to sew my long 1/4 inch seam. Press all my seams to make sure they are going in the right direction, and I'll be back to attach the final row. And here's my top 2 rows done. You can see that I was very careful about nesting, and I went back afterwards and pressed everything super flat to make sure none of the seams are buckling. You don't want lumpy blocks. So there's our first 2 rows done, and we'll do our final row. Once again, I'm going to nest. I'm going to check to make sure my seams are running opposite each other. Start in the center, pin, and if you need to repress a seam, don't worry about it. Just pin it in place, sew it, and then when you press your long center seam, just make sure to press those nested seams flat again. Line that up. That looks nice. One more pin. And then I'll sew my last seam. And here's our final block. This is bonus block number 4. It's the end of our 2021 Jelly Roll Block of the Month challenge. I've really had fun doing this challenge with you, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. As mentioned in the beginning of this video, everything you need to join this 2021 Jelly Roll Block of the Month is in my Facebook group called Stitch It with Cricut, and there's a link to that group in the description right under this video. Thank you for watching.